And we are live Bruins Beat on a Thursday at 10:45 a.m. I am Evan Marinofsky. That is Joey Copponi jumping on. So I'm not just talking to myself like we did with the draft lottery. Joey, what's up?
Hey, not too much, man. Not the timing that we expected to be here, but happy to be here nonetheless.
I was sure this would come Monday, and then I was like, all right, it'll definitely be Tuesday. And then it wasn't Tuesday. I was like, all right, it's definitely gonna be Wednesday. And then Wednesday, Connor and I did Poke the Bear, and I started to think, maybe they're looking at the stars. Maybe they're looking at Donskoff. Maybe they're waiting for Pete DeBoer to get fired. Not the case. Not the case. We are here because the Bruins have officially hired Marco Sturm. To no one's surprise. I don't think this is kind of like one of the least shocking head coaching hires, just because, again, Cam Robinson tweeted last week that they were expected to hire him. It's been the word the last week since, it's probably going to be Sturm. People I talked to thought it was going to be Sturm as well. So, I'm not shocked at all. Were you surprised by this?
I'm surprised only because of the timeline that you just laid out. I imagined if it was Sturm, then there's no point in waiting. If you have your guy, you have your guy. What are we sitting around for? And you guys made a great point with DeBoer. I really did think, okay, if the reports were coming out that Sturm looked like a done deal, and then you go through the majority of this week with no announcement, then I started to think, okay, we are waiting for something. So I was shocked only because of the exact time slot that the news came. But no, not shocked on the whole that this is the hire, and frankly, a little underwhelmed. I think a lot of people kind of are in that same boat, that it is a first-time head coach. It is a former player. It is a nod to the old boys club, if that's the narrative that you roll with at home. Not shocked, not surprised. Can't say elated.
Interesting. I viewed it a little bit differently. I don't think he's part of the old boys club, and I get the comparisons because he played here, but he only played here for 5 years, and he was brought up coaching the German national team, and then he was in the Kings organization for a long time. So I don't put him in that club, and I know it's easy to because he played here, and they're pumping up the Winter Classic photos, and people get annoyed with that. I get it, but it's sort of like I've made this comparison before, like Vrabel being a Belichick guy. Like people go, oh, Mike Vrabel is a Bill Belichick guy. And it's like, well, he played for Belichick, but he didn't coach under Bill Belichick. He didn't coach he wasn't his defensive coordinator or anything. Sturm's sort of the same thing. I don't think he's not a Bruins guy. I know he obviously played here, and they're saying, oh, he's coming home and this and that. I also like the direction they're going. I like it. And I've been consistent on this. I didn't want them to go get a retread coach, someone who had been recycled around the league, a Laviolette, a Tortorella. Jay Woodcroft was a little bit different because Woodcroft's only been in one spot, and it was sort of short-lived. He's still very young. So I was a little more open to that. But, Mitch Love was sort of Misha Donskoff was my favorite. Mitch Love was sort of right after. And Sturm isn't that far behind. I'm fine with the direction they're headed in with this. Clearly Sturm is a cheaper option. We've heard that a lot. I would assume he would come cheaper given that he's a first-time head coach, but they want someone who's going to grow with the roster, and whether or not they're actually going to let Sturm grow with this roster, I think it's the right direction to head in. We'll see what they end up doing with him, but I think it's the right direction in picking a young first-time head coach who, again, is known to be a good communicator and good with younger players. He's helped develop a lot of good guys out in LA. I'm cool with that. I am. And I know it's not a flashy, sexy hire either. I get that.
That's the thing, is it's not flashy and it's not sexy. But to what you said about, the younger players, and this shouldn't be a shock either, but it does feel like that was the prevailing bullet point around Sturm, right? That he's good with the young guys, key in development, whatever. And so it does just further reinforce that is where the Bruins are, which again shouldn't be a shock. People should come to terms with the fact that that's where the Bruins are. But it does further that with the cap space that they have, and with the established players and the superstars that they do have, that it's not going to be an instant turnaround, that they're not making a push in. And it doesn't wipe it completely off the table, but this hire alone, in a vacuum, doesn't point to, okay, maybe they're going to be further ahead than we thought. This, to me, does feel like, a guy who is here to oversee the beginning of a retool, a rebuild, development, and that being the primary focus for what's the average coach's lifespan here? 4 years?
100%. And this is the thing. This is my biggest question with Sturm is like, so you want him to grow with the roster, and that's fair. And I like that idea. Is he actually going to grow with this roster? What are your expectations these next 2 years? Because he's likely going to get at least 2 years before you start getting into the hot seat type stuff. Yeah. And if he's like, you know, do they expect to be a playoff contending team this year? Well, if they're not, that hurts him. If they expect to then be in the playoffs in 26, 27, and they're not, well, that hurts him. And they might say, hey, he's done a good job of bringing in, you know, some of our younger guys, Patra, Lowry, things, guys like that. But can he get us, I'm speaking as the Bruins, can he get us into that playoff tier, into being a contender again? And that's where you see some of these coaches, like I always go back to like a Greg Cronin in Anaheim, or like Jeff Blashill, or Derek Lalonde in Detroit, where these guys were kind of brought in to sort of grow with the roster, and it didn't really work. Now, the Bruins are a little bit more stable of a franchise. I know Montgomery didn't last here as long as people expected, but typically, I mean, Claude and Cassidy were on for longer than an NHL's average NHL head coach's lifespan. So, you know, I do wonder about that. In terms of what they're going to be, though, I think from a Marco Sturm coached Bruins team, to me, this is hearkening back to what they were for the majority of their Chara Bergeron years. They're going to be a defensive team. This is going to be a team that is defense first, built from the net out, which already, if you look at their roster, that's their strength in net. You'd expect Jeremy Swayman to be better next year. On defense, you have Lindholm and McAvoy coming back. You have guys like Zadorov. You have Lowry in the, you know, kind of on the roster. He needs to get better defensively, but he's on the roster. Their strength is on D and in net. And I think they want to go back to winning games 2-1 and 3-2. And that's why it's also not a sexy way to win, but it's probably their best shot given the shortcomings they have on offense right now. So I think they, you know, and Sturm with the Kings and Ontario have been great goals against wise. So I think that's probably going to be the identity they take on with Sturm here.
What I think when I hear that isn't that what they did last year? You know, didn't they take that similar approach? They wanted to get bigger. They wanted to get stronger. They tried to match a game style that was foreign from how they had been playing the past couple of successful years. And obviously, you know, a couple of injuries are going to change the way that goes, especially on the back end. Like, you can't just be a defensive team when 2 of your top 4 go down, and when Zadorov is slow to adjust, having a bad year, I guess is a better way to put it. But yeah, I mean, that's where my brain initially goes. Like, I hear that and I say, did they do that? And also, I will say, hand up, that with Sturm, like, I didn't follow his career as an assistant in LA. Like, I wasn't following, you know, what he was doing with the Kings organization as an assistant, like what his duties were. So that's like a big time, like, I'm taking everybody's word, just hand up, that if he is a defensive first coach, I'm taking that on word.
Yeah, I think they did try to get bigger and stronger last year, and I thought that was the wrong approach. I think this is a little bit different. I think this is stylistically. I mean, the Kings have been historic for running a 1-3-1 neutral zone trap. They switched to a 1-2-2 this year. Nikita Zadorov's been outspoken about how he hated the 1-3-1 when he was in Vancouver playing the Kings. You know, do the Bruins run a strict 1-3-1 in the neutral zone where you have 1 forward up and you have, you know, 3 guys, including a defenseman in the neutral zone and 1 back? Like, I don't know if they go that far, but I think just stylistically, structurally, they're going to be more disciplined. Same with their own zone. And I think that's going to be sort of their thing. Montgomery was a little bit looser defensively. They regressed under Montgomery defensively. That wasn't totally his fault. It was just sort of his structure. They wanted to be a little more offensive. I also think what's going to be interesting, like, in terms of on D, is how do those D activate? Like, you know, how do you get more offense out of Charlie McAvoy? How do you get more offense out of Hampus Lindholm? How do you get more offense out of Lowry and still have him be a competent defender? And I think my guess is, and I've said this all along, like, I would assume that a big part of Sturm's interview, or at least something that definitely came up, was Lowry. And you know, how do you turn him into a guy who can be responsible in his own zone, who you can trust late in games? Because you can't, like, at the current moment, you can't trust Lowry if you're up a goal with 5 minutes left. You can't. And so finding ways to activate your D, get them involved offensively, but also keep them very stout in their own zone. I think that's going to be their biggest thing. It also hinges on how good Swayman is next year. But I think they're going to be a defensive team. That's what they're going to be. And you try to win low scoring games. And again, you're right. It's not flashy. It's not sexy, but it's probably the best option for this roster. And then you have the other part of it with the younger players too, right? Where like, you obviously have Patra and Low Ryan, Lysell, Merkulov in the system. You also have guys like Mitten, and then you have your draft picks coming up. Like Bruins are going to have no shortage of high-end prospects coming in, and you need a coach who can handle that, who has experience with that, and who is going to be, lenient with them. They're going to make mistakes. They're going to do stupid things, and like you hope that Sturm is still around in 3 or 4 years for when their 7th overall pick comes in, if it's Jake O'Brien or Roger McQueen or whomever it is. So like, I think the biggest parts of his job are going to be shoring things up defensively, because that's the biggest thing the Bruins are, have prided themselves in. And then it's bringing along these young guys and making sure that they're going to make an impact at the NHL level when they finally reach it here.
Let me ask you this, and this might be bordering on a radio take, but I'm going to posit it anyway.
I'm all for it.
Would this team, being that they're so young, have benefited more from having a veteran coach who has been there, who has, been coaching for 8, 10, 12 years versus a first-time head coach? And I get the Marco Sturm's primary accolade is how good he is with development and the young players and all that. Was there room for him somewhere else in the system, be it an assistant coach, somewhere else, player development, that could have benefited the team while also getting a veteran coach here?
Yeah, the veteran coach is interesting because, I mean, when you're getting a vet, you're getting someone who's experienced. You pretty much know what you're going to get. The floor is not as low as it might be for Sturm. I mean, there's a chance Sturm is a horrible head coach and is not fit to be an NHL coach. That's absolutely a possibility. And that's one of the risks you take. But the ceiling of someone like Sturm is higher because you don't really know it. And with a veteran head coach, you're bringing, like, let's just use Laviolette. Right? Like Laviolette, take out even like what happened in New York the last 2 years, but like just Laviolette in general is coming in and his shelf life is like 3 to 4 years. And that kind of coach is taking on a team that's contending. And we've talked a lot about on this podcast whether or not the Bruins are really going to be contenders next year. Just that question alone is going to push veterans away. I mean, we even talked about like Pete DeBoer. Like if the Dallas Stars fire Pete DeBoer, you're the only team with a head coaching vacancy. Do you like really pursue him? And no doubt he gives you a bump in the short term. No doubt you're better in the short term, but like, how does he grow with this roster? And would he even want to be here? Would he want to be here if his main job priorities are, hey, bring in Matt Patra and Fraser Mitten and Merkulov and Low Ryan, try to get something out of Lysell. And then, 2 years down the road, it's Jake O'Brien or whoever you draft in this upcoming draft. And then the next one, is he going to want that? Probably not. Right. Like you're far away. You're further away than I think he would like to be for contending. And also veteran coaches often, and we even saw this with Jim Montgomery, don't have super long leashes for young guys. And it's a win now league. And you'll see it with Sturm too. The idea, like, yes, Sturm is better, is more probably going to be more lenient with young guys, but that doesn't mean that, someone like Fabian Lysell can go out there and not be prevalent in his own zone and still continue to get shifts. So like that's another big part of it too, where did you lose me there for a second?
Yep. Sure did.
Am I still here?
Yeah, you're back now.
Okay. My bad, guys. But to me, that's the biggest thing is that would be the difference between a vet coach and a rookie coach for sure.
So to follow that logic train, just to the next stop, if you have this unknown ceiling with a young head coach or a first-time head coach versus a vet. And the idea of contending is what's going to bring in these high ceiling or higher floor veteran head coaches.
Yep.
Does that point to Sturm being a stopgap until they are ready to contend? Do they start looking again? Is this a matter of, well, we can't get the guy right now. We can't get the veteran guy right now. We'll have a guy here who's good for development. Once we're back to where we want to be, check that market.
Easily could be. Easily could be. He easily could be a stopgap. And I think it's the biggest thing. Like, there's no guarantee that he is the guy, like with the roster when they're contending again. But I think their idea is correct in that let's get a coach that builds with this roster. I think that's a valid, and I like that mindset of exactly that. Hoping that Marco Sturm is coaching this team through their early days. I mean, Bruce Cassidy was essentially that. Bruce Cassidy was that. I mean, Bruce Cassidy, his first full season was guys like DeBrusque and Bjork and McAvoy and people like that. And bringing them up and getting them ingrained in the core. And I don't like, to me, you hope that Sturm does that this time around. You hope that that's what Marco Sturm is, where he's able to be built into that. And I think he can. I think there's the potential there. He's well liked, good communicator. I also think, this sounds cheesy, Joey, and I feel like I'm crossing sports here, which can be sometimes a no-no. Mm-hmm. But the biggest thing for me is like sometimes the best coaches in Boston are the ones that played here, who understand what it's like here, who understand the media pressure, who understand the market. And he gets it. He played here for a while, and he played here in the beginning days of the Bergeron and Chara successes. So, like, I know it's cheesy to say, and I know people don't want to hear about, like, his time here because it is an easy crutch, but, like, it does give him a perspective. It does help. There were times I felt like Jim Montgomery maybe didn't fully grasp what hockey was in this city and what it meant. Mm-hmm. But I think Sturm's a guy that kind of has that pedigree. So, yeah, it's a long way of saying Sturm has the qualities to build with this roster, but that doesn't mean that he is going to be. We could be sitting here 3 years from now talking about a new head coach. They hired John Tortorella or Pete Laviolette or whatever, and that could be what we're sitting here talking about. So,
yeah,
we'll see.
My gut feels like a stopgap kind of situation. And like, I am a homer. I'm a home thumper big time. There is just a little piece of me I get quickly tired of anything, if
I'm the same way. You and I we need dopamine immediately.
Yeah. So like if I see a take 3 times, the third time I see it, I'm like, oh, I disagree with it now. There's something in me that's contrarian. That's like, I've heard that the Red Sox need to spend enough times to go, no, it's actually not the problem. You know what I mean? Yes. And there is a level of, well, this guy played here. Well, he's from Charlestown. Well, his dad was a popcorn guy at the Old Garden. And you get to a level where I'm like, that I don't know how much that matters to me. I want them to win hockey games more than anything. So the idea that Sturm played here, I don't know if they would go so far as to hire a head coach out of fan service. I don't think that's what I'm saying by any means.
That'd be a great idea.
There's a level of like, that doesn't do anything for me. Like the fact that you played here, wonderful. Like now you're Marco Sturm, the head coach. You're not, Marco Sturm, the Winter Classic guy. Like it doesn't mean anything to me now that you're behind the bench. Like you're an entirely different entity to me. I understand.
Oh, completely. Like completely.
It brings something to know what it's
that's
like
the biggest thing. Is it's cool he had nice moments here, but that doesn't have any bearing on him as a head coach. Doesn't matter. And that's one of the things that you can't get married to. I just think him playing here does give him a little bit added perspective. I want to get into Sweeney though. Whether or not this is Sweeney's last head coaching hire, or if this kind of makes or breaks Don Sweeney, because I've heard Dupes say this on Pucks with Haggs. But first, our friends over at Prize Picks. Do you know, Ball? There's only one series left in the playoffs, and the championship is officially on the line. That means time is running out for you to put your final takes to the test on Prize Picks, the best place to cash in on your favorite sports. This year's basketball playoffs are headed towards crowning a first-time champ in more than 50 years. Hockey, the hockey championship, Stanley Cup, Wednesday night, heck of a game. And by the way, Joey, all the Prize Picks I gave out to people on Bruins Beat and Poke the Bear this week, they all hit. I was sitting pretty. I'm sitting really happy today. So maybe it's time to start listening to Evan on some of these picks. Maybe it's time. Maybe it's time to start listening. Anyway, Prize Picks offers Venmo, Apple Pay, MasterCard, and more for quick and easy deposits into your account this sports season. Again, McDavid time on ice, Barkov time on ice. I think those are always locks. I don't believe they have picks out yet for game 2, but when they do, I will be sure to give them to you. And again, I benefited from Taco Tuesday with Sergei Bobrovsky. I got him at 20.5 saves. And he ended up making like 40. It was insane. So very happy. I also took Draisaitl, less than or more than 0.5 points. He scored 2 minutes in. But so anyway, download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That is code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. So one thing that's come out a lot, Joey, is Sweeney. Should Sweeney have made another head coaching hire and fire, which he did this time around? For the third, but technically fourth time, because he did promote Joe Sacco. I do think this does make or break Sweeney. Like if Sturm blows up in their face in the next year or two, I'd have to imagine Sweeney is not going past the extension he just signed. Whereas if Sturm works and Sturm is phenomenal and he lasts 6 years, well, then I think it's different. Sweeney might not be getting fired after that. Maybe he does pick another head coach. But if Sturm is lasting under 2 years or under 3 years, I can't imagine Sweeney is going to last much more than that.
I will never underestimate how long Don Sweeney is.
He's going to be there longer than we're alive.
Never do it. They could start 0-20 this year, and he just has plot armor. He has some kind of shield around him that he is going to be in the position that he's in. So I'm not even confident in that idea that like if Sturm is a complete bust, like you said, like it is on the table that he could just be not fit to be an NHL head coach. He could give his first post-game presser after a loss and be in tears.
Yeah,
and
maybe.
Like, I can't do this. I can't do it. And maybe like quit that day. I'm not positive it blows back on Sweeney at all.
Yeah, I think my guess is that if this did blow up, if this did not work, I can't see him staying much longer than that, because this does. I mean, he is over 10 years now as GM, and he is getting a chance to right the wrongs of the last year and a half, which a lot of it has been on him. And Sturm is one of the solutions he's put forward. And if Sturm doesn't work, I can't imagine Sweeney lasting. I just can't imagine Sweeney lasting much longer. I know that people think he's gonna last forever, but to me, like this is
it has to come to an end at some point.
Yes, it's the same with the draft. Like if this is a huge draft. Next year's also a huge draft. If 2 years from now these prospects aren't developing or they're not contributing at the NHL level on the timeline they should be, and that on ice NHL product starts to stink, then yeah, Sweeney probably is gone. Like that would, to me, like this is his sort of last chance to right the wrongs of the last couple of years.
It feels like to me from the outside, and you're closer with the circle than I am. I mean, I don't know how close you are with Don Sweeney and Charlie Jacobs, but
not very.
I don't know if you guys are like grabbing dinner, but
we're tight. Oh yeah, we're all the time.
But I mean, Sweeney and it feels like there is just a personal relationship that kind of supersedes a lot of the wrongdoing, at least up to this point, where there is a trust level and there is also a profit margin, where it feels like Charlie Jacobs really only tie to the Boston Bruins is those two individuals, is Neely Sweeney, and there's like this periodic check-in wherein money's up. Hey, why isn't the team winning? It's not my fault. Sounds good. And that, to whatever extent, is the relationship as it appears on the outside, where anytime they make any kind of public statement, the Jacobs are in full support of what the front office is doing. And Charlie Jacobs is not a hockey fan. Like, he's not watching these games. It feels like if money's rolling in, money's rolling in. And there's obviously a higher ceiling of dollars to hit when you're in the playoffs and when you're whatever. But very rarely has that not been the case. So
yeah,
that's like the ultimate marker is like playoff money to me.
That's why I do wonder, and I know they said it at the end of the season press conference this year, Jacobs, Sweeney, and Neely were like, playoffs are not our goal. We're trying to get back to being a cup contending team. My guess is that Sturm probably gets a year, maybe 2 years, where the playoffs are not the goal, but that will change quick. And there's going to need to be, even in those years where you're not in the playoffs, you're going to need to be, if you're not in the playoffs, you're going to need to be competitive. You cannot be a lottery team. Now, it annoys me to be like picking 14th, like either pick third or fourth or pick like, in the 20s. but that's sort of where they are. They are kind of a middle of the road team at the moment. That's why I've been so hot on like, go get Mitch Marner. Like he would help you. That would help you incredibly. Both in the short and long term. I want to touch on some of the comments people have made. MRAC says, please, some reporter ask about assistant coaches and if Sturm is allowed to pick his own guys. The introductory presser is next Tuesday, June 10th, and I'm going to assume that someone will ask that. For sure, I should be at that. Emerson Kelly says, I do agree with getting a new young head coach instead of a veteran retread, but I would have preferred Love or Donskoff. I'm with you, Emerson. I'm with you. I liked Donskoff the most. We had talked about him quite a bit. I know he'd never been a head coach, but I really liked him. I loved Mitch Love, no pun intended. I thought watching videos of him and his philosophies I really liked. He was also defense first. I think that's what they were going for with this new head coach, was like defense first, an emphasis on D, keeping pucks out of the back of the net. But again, Sturm fits that same mold too. So like my other thing though, Joey, and this is interesting, after Dan Muse was hired by the Penguins yesterday, Bruins were the last team to need a head coach. So they really had their pick of the bunch, and of the guys that I wanted them to get, they were all available. And so I'm very curious, like, we'll probably never know this. When was Sturm offered? Did they talk to Misha Donskoff? Was Mitch Love ever close? Like, I'm very curious, to see over the course of time who they were going for. Because to me, it seemed, and that's why, like, when Pittsburgh hired Muse, I said, wait a minute, the Bruins might not hire a coach for another week. Like, they honestly might not, because they might say, you know what, now we have the pick of the bunch. Love isn't taking the job, or, Love was thought to be the favorite in Pittsburgh. Now we have full access to Mitch Love and all. So I was curious maybe if they would wait a little bit longer to maybe get Donskoff or whomever.
Yeah. I mean, Love and Woodcroft were the only other names that I heard thrown around as far as
Jay Woodcroft as well. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And Jay Leach was another name that got tossed around. And I'm very curious speaking of assistant coaches, I wonder if they keep him around. We know Joe Sacco's headed to the Rangers to be on like the most New England staff ever. David Quinn, Rhode Island guy, Joe Sacco, Mass guy, Mike Sullivan, Mass guy. But so I think, I do think that it will be imperative for Sturm to pick his own assistants, I think.
Yeah. Whether or not he gets that, I do not know. A first-time NHL head coach?
I would, like, I know in the past, like, obviously Montgomery didn't get his own assistants. Cassidy, I believe, got some. I'm blanking. I know, like, Pandolfo was an assistant at first. Kevin Dean, Joe Sacco. Joe Sacco was a holdover. So I think he got to pick a little bit. But, yeah, I mean, I it would be, in a perfect world, yes, Sturm would pick his own assistants, or at least have a large say in who gets picked. And the other thing is, like, Sturm's power play, historically, his teams have not been great on the power play. And someone asked me in my mailbag last week, are you worried about Sturm with the power play? I'm not overly worried, because to me, it's more who's the assistant in charge of the power play, who's running that. That's my biggest.
So
worry.
Leach may or may not be here. We know Sacco gone. Chris Kelly still here. Yeah.
To my knowledge, I've not heard anything. There's been no reporting, at least that I've seen, on Chris Kelly. Whether or not they keep him, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, it feels
you need to
weird
move on.
because, like,
I think you need to move on.
If you want to bring in a new head coach, you ideally want just a new system in place, right? And you want to give that guy a leash, but at the same time, with a first-time head coach, it's this weird line to walk where there are guys who have been in your system, been with your organization, that you want to climb the ladder and that you want to give the next step to. You want to reward those guys. And also, how much of the losing can you put on a guy like Chris Kelly and, like, punishing him by saying, hey, we need to go in a different direction? I don't know. It's a weird line to walk for sure. And I don't think that the answer is a clear one. But I mean, I feel myself pulled both ways. Like, I want whoever is at the helm to truly be in charge of what's going on. At the same time, I don't like the idea of just tossing guys aside because you want to give the reins to a first-time head coach. It's I don't have a clear answer.
What I think would be a very good idea by the Bruins, and I wouldn't be surprised if they did this. You often see this with first-time head coaches. You bring on an assistant who's been a head coach, who has a wide range of experience. To me, that's what they need. What I would put around Sturm is like if you want a guy like Sturm who's a first-time NHL head coach, he's been an AHL head coach, but an NHL head coach. You put a veteran, older guy with him as an assistant. Like I look at even St. Louis, and obviously Montgomery's been a head coach many times, but like Claude Julien's on his staff. And I think that can really help. I think that adds a lot. It can kind of help a first-time NHL head coach find his identity and find his voice and try different things. So I don't have any names off the top of my head. Very curious what other people think. Because again, like I don't think Laviolette or Tortorella are becoming assistants anytime soon because those are head coaches. But you know, a veteran guy, I would not be surprised. Here's an interesting one, and I always bring this name up because he's local. Like this guy is not. I don't believe he's leaving for the NHL anytime soon. But like Ron Ralston. Ron Ralston was the head coach in Buffalo in, I think it was like 2012, 2013. But he's coached everywhere. He's older. He's the associate head coach at Providence College. He's a really good coach, really good guy. That kind of person would be perfect as an associate head coach or assistant head coach for the Bruins. Not, Ron or someone of that mold, someone who's been an NHL head coach, someone who's been a lot of places, been involved in player development, been a head coach, been an assistant, all those things. That kind of guy would be perfect.
Like you're saying, not necessarily to implement philosophy, but to like impart the knowledge and the experience of just having been in the position.
Definitely structure and things like that. But yes, what you just said, like knowledge, wisdom, all those things I think are vitally important. And I think, you see it in any sport. You'll see like first-time NFL head coaches, they have coordinators who are super experienced, or like MLB head coaches will have a bench coach that has been around forever. Like you need those kinds of guys. And we look at like, obviously this past season, Joe Sacco had been there a long time. And so I think he was sort of that guy, but I would absolutely, if I'm the Bruins, I'm absolutely looking at, can I find a vet out there who can join the staff? Because Sacco's now gone. You have at least one assistant coaching spot open. I'd assume you'll have 2, maybe even 3. I'd also assume goalie Bob will stick around. He's been there forever, and he's been really successful. So I can't see them parting with him, but he's obviously not on the bench. So, again, I would use one of those assistant coaching spots for a guy we just talked about, a veteran guy who can impart a lot of wisdom on a first-time NHL head coach.
Welcome back, Bruce Cassidy.
Yeah, that's Bruce Cassidy want to come back. Does Bruce Cassidy want to come back? He wants to be an assistant instead of the head coach.
Yeah, he would take that, right? On a rebuilding Boston Bruins.
He has a house in the Cape. He has a house in the Cape. I want to come back. It keeps him
part-time assistant. Yeah, he'd take it.
Yeah, stay in the Cape most of the year. So we'll see.
I have a fun little tidbit, a little fun fact.
Let's hear
it. This is courtesy of Scott McLaughlin, friend of the program.
Love Scott.
Marco Sturm becomes the first German-born head coach in NHL history, and just the 5th European head coach overall. He is the Bruins' first European-born head coach. So there's that. Do with that information what you will, but I thought that was a fun little fact. Did you cut out while I was saying it?
That is incredible. I can't wait for like Mike Felger to be like, "Oh, these Europeans." I can't. I don't know if I'm coming through. My connection is awful, by the way, and I apologize for that. I can't wait for like Mike Felger to be like, "Oh, he's a European head coach. Oh, he doesn't want to win. He doesn't know what it takes to win. Oh, yeah. Soft. Guys like that. I need a kid. Soft. They're gonna play a soft game. They're gonna get beaten around by the Panthers." No, I mean that's an incredible thing. First European head coach for the Bruins is pretty cool. It's interesting. I've said this before, and I always stand by it. Like. You'll often hear people say, well, they need to and you saw this last offseason, we need to build a team that can beat the Panthers. And that's a fair idea, but I hate that idea. Be your own team.
It's also like, no kid. Like, we need a team that can beat the All-Star team. Okay, yeah, no kidding. We need to build a band that's better than the Beatles. Yeah. What are you talking about? Sure.
Enjoy that.
Yeah, the Panthers are very, very good. I don't know if you've watched them. Like in game 1 last night, I got a text in the middle of the 3rd from a buddy that said the Panthers might be the perfect hockey team.
Oh, I completely agree. I completely agree. Yeah, well, they're well built. I mean, again, you have the culture is second to none because you bring in guys like Seth Jones, Brad Marchand, Gustav, all these guys they brought in over the last couple of years who, especially like a Seth Jones, whose stock was in the toilet in Chicago, comes to Florida, plays the game of his life in Game 7 against the Leafs, and is just fantastic. And they play physical. They're in your face. Guys like Bennett are clutch, big game players. Their goaltending is good. Like, they're the perfectly built team. Now, as a Bruins fan, you should hope that they start to stink in the next year or two because you have their first round pick in 2027. And that would be a fun thing if that Marchand pick ended up becoming like the 10th overall pick or something. Yeah. Or I might be top 10 protected, but like 11th overall pick or something. But yeah, they're the perfectly built team. But the Bruins have to be their own team. Also, the Atlantic is incredibly difficult. The Atlantic, I mean, you think about like the Canadiens and the Senators finally made it into the playoffs this year. They're young teams that have been building towards this and seem to be like they're headed towards being playoff regulars or at least contending every year. The Lightning are still really good. The Panthers are still really good. I know the Leafs will probably take a little bit of a step back, but they'll still be in it.
Yeah.
Then there's you. And there's the Red Wings, who should be making a playoff push at some point. The Sabres are a lost cause, but like, again, that's 7 of 8 teams, including yourself. So like, you need to be your own team. And if your own team is, hey, we're going to beat teams 3-2, 2-1, 2-0, like that's probably your best bet. You have a ton of money in net. You have a lot of money you've invested on defense, including guys like Zadorov. I know people don't really love him. That's what you have. That's your strength. So I think that's going to be their strength. And then it's developing those forwards. And look, I think Sturm to me was in a group of 3 or 4 that I was looking for the Bruins to do that. And they hired Sturm. As we said before, it's not flashy. It's not sexy. It's not oh my God, they got, Mike Sullivan. It's not that, but it's, there's hope and there's potential there. There's also hope and potential that it blows up, that he's not. I mean, Dave Lewis was a first-time head coach in 06-07. Dave Lewis was, I think he was a longtime assistant with those incredible Detroit teams. It was like, oh my God, we're getting, the next guy. And that he blew up. He was awful head coach. Yeah. Horrible. So there's a chance that that's Sturm, but I'd have to imagine that he's going to be much better than that. That's my feeling.
Yeah. You got to hope. You got to hope. I have hope. I want to say I have faith, but I have more hope than anything.
Yes. There's that hope. I think we need it with all the teams around here doing bad. Celtics are out. Red Sox stink. You need a little bit of hope. I will say Jibade just said you can get to the Metro Division with the wild card. You're right. So that I think the prime way to get in is you're the first wild card next year, assuming that the top Atlantic team is better than the top Metro team, which again, the Bruins should be contending for a wild card spot. If they make the correct moves this offseason. Now, if you go get Mitch Marner, you should be in the running for like top 3 in the Atlantic, which is why I want Mitch Marner. I will never stop saying this. I want Mitch Marner. But that's a topic for another day. That's a topic for another day.
I have another fun German fact. I don't know if it's that fun. I care about this stuff. These are little tidbits, little nuggets you guys can take home if you want to. Marco Sturm, 4th among German-born players in terms of NHL points. The 3 people above him, a fella named Leon Draisaitl.
I was going to say that's probably the one I know. And then who else?
Danny Heatley.
Oh, I didn't know Danny Heatley was German.
And number 3, you know him, you love him, the first ever German-born player in the NHL, Walt Tkachuk. No relation.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I was thinking like, you're gonna tell me like Dennis Seidenberg? Like when you said you know him, you love him. I was like, Dennis Seidenberg above Sturm?
Austin Matthews. He's been lying to us.
That's right. Chris Nosek says people are vastly underrating how much injuries hurt the team this year between both Lindholms, McAvoy, and Kaslik. I agree. I completely agree with that. It's just like, you need those guys to return to form, which is totally possible. But you also do need a little bit more. You need a more scoring punch. You do. You need higher end talent up front. And my whole thing is like the draft is going to be the place to get that, not for next year, but for the future, where you're going to hopefully find a number 1 center or some, stable wingers that can, someday be productive for you up front. But yeah, I mean, Sturm, it's an interesting hire because like we knew this for like a week, or we, at least that was sort of the popular thing. They didn't go away from it. Like last time when Montgomery got hired, it was like David Quinn was rumored and like it seemed like he was about to get hired. And then it ends up, being Jim Montgomery, which sort of came out of left field. This isn't this isn't like a, oh my God, can you believe they did this? So yeah, it's Marco Sturm. It'll be interesting to see. But sometimes I'll say this, Joey, you know this. Sometimes the most underwhelming, non-sexy head coaching hires are the best ones. They're the best ones. You see it in all sports. Like, it's entirely possible. And I do think this works out. I do. That would be my like big prediction. If Prize Picks had a thing that said like, is Marco Sturm going to work out, or like more or less than like 3 years, I'd go more. I think this works out.
Here's a quote. Put this on the quote card, whoever edits this show. The worst coaching hires are the ones that come with big expectations.
Damn right. Damn right.
And I don't think that there's huge expectations. I think this is hope and see. And there is, like you said, a high ceiling.
It's a high ceiling. It's also a very, 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 very low floor. But you take that. Like, I think you're okay with that. And that's fine. Like, we said it earlier in this show. We've said it before. John Tortorella comes in, you'll get a boost at the beginning of next year. No doubt. You're going to start out better than you were last year. No question. But how do you develop? How does he develop those younger players? And I'm not just saying, zoning in on Torts. Kind of goes for all like retread veteran coaches, even like a Rick Tocchet. Like, how's that going to age? How is he a year in, 2 years in, maybe even 3 years in? Where are you at? So that's the biggest thing for me. And Sturm seems, I was a kid when he played, so I obviously have never like covered him, but seemed to be very well liked. And now everything that I've heard and read about him as a coach now is that he's well liked. He's a good communicator. The big thing though is, we'll end on this. I do think the Bruins need a little bit of a kick in the ass in the dressing room. And I think Mitch Love would have certainly provided that. I think Marco Sturm is going to have to do that. Like, as much as he's a good communicator. Oh, we just went out for a second there. As much as I'll repeat myself, as much as he is a good communicator and relates to players, I do also think.
Oh, that might have been it. We might have lost him right there. That felt like a big break. It might be a little bit before we get him back here. Do you want me to finish your thought for you? I can just guess for you if you want. As much as he's a good communicator, we will have to wait and see if he is. Now you're back.
Okay, sorry about that. My Wi-Fi, I'm in the office. My Wi-Fi switched to the restaurant next door, so I very much apologize to everybody for like dropping off there for a second. I will try to make this point as succinctly as I can. I don't even remember what I was saying, but
good communicator.
Good, yes, as good a communicator as Marco Sturm is, and as good as he is at relating to his players, he is absolutely without a doubt going to have an edge in that room, because they're entering a new leadership phase. You're entering a phase where Marchand's gone, Bergeron's gone, Krejci's gone, Rask, Chara, all those guys are gone. Pastrnak, to me, seems like the favorite to be the captain, but you also have guys like McAvoy. You also lost a lot of leadership, Coyle, Carlo, at the deadline last year. So it is a relatively new team. You have guys like Zadorov who are going to need to step up, both Lindholms. It's a new leadership crew. So Sturm's also going to have to be stern. Sturm is going to have to get the most out of this room. I know, can you believe it? And if that is being tougher on these guys, then that's what he absolutely has to do. And I think that, I think we're going to get a good sense of that probably at his introductory press conference next week.
One quick thing, this is like a long conversation, so we don't need to dive all the way into it. You think they name a captain this year, or you think they go without?
I think they name one.
Yeah,
I think they name one. I look at Pastrnak and what he did the last 2 months, especially after the deadline moves, and how good he was, how much he was sort of like, I don't really care about that. We gotta win games, blah, blah, blah. Like, to me, that's the guy. That's your captain. I think he's earned it, and you roll with that. I know some people think they shouldn't name a captain. I say you name a captain. You name David Pastrnak captain, and that's not going to happen like today. That would be something like right before training camp if they were to do it. So, by the way, Jay Baited said Nick Kyprios reported that Martin Necas wasn't overly thrilled with Colorado and wants to explore other options. Colorado will have to make a decision this summer if they want to get an extension done. Get it done, Don. Necas is a flies. This is my thing, Joey, and we're getting off topic. Well, not getting off topic, but we're not on totally talking about Sturm. Any high-end player that the Bruins could potentially get, I will fight and talk and want them to get. because they need it that bad. They need high-end talent. If it's Marner, if it's Jason Robertson, if it's Martin Necas, if it's Connor McDavid, I will go balls to the wall for the Bruins to get that player because, by God, they need high-end talent. They need speed. They need skill. They need goal scoring. And if it's Necas, if it's Marner, whoever it is, that's what they need the most. So I am all for any high-end player. I will, even if it takes too much to get them, I will gladly sit here and talk about it and explore the options to get that player because they certainly need that.
I mean, we've seen what a frustrating watch the Bruins can be when they're playing relatively solid hockey, but lack goal scoring ability. It is maybe the worst product that you can watch. It's so frustrating to watch.
Last year. I mean, remember those games? I don't want to think about those games. So hopefully with Sturm, you won't get those. And hopefully the other thing with Sturm is making sure you're not losing games like 7-2. Remember last year? Those games were just, and again, I think as Chris Nosek pointed out, like you're getting back the Lindholms, you're getting back Charlie McAvoy, Swayman should be better. So like that probably won't happen next year. So I guess to end here, like my big prediction with Sturm, I think it works. I like this hire. I think this works. I think he's the right kind of voice for this. We'll get a better sense next week when we talk to him. And that's where again, not a surprise. That's Marco Sturm, man. Marco Sturm's the next head coach of the Boston Bruins. Pretty wild day.
Welcome home.
Maybe it's time to win the Joe Thornton trade, Joey. It's time to win the Joe Thornton trade.
It's time. All of the 20 years have been leading to this moment.
I keep going out. Am I back?
You're back. You're back. It's time to win.
I apologize,
trade, and we're going to.
Hopefully,
it's
you're
time.
able to watch
it's time.
This.
It's all been leading to this.
It's time. The universe wants us gone. All right, guys. That's been this live episode of Bruins Beat. That's Joey Copponi, Evan Marinofsky, represented by Bruins Beat. You Bruins Beat listeners, have a great rest of your week.